Hey everyone, welcome back to Casey 3D Sparks. Today we're going to be creating a jack-o'-lantern monster. Obviously today is going to be part one where we actually make the detailed like jack-o'-lantern base that can be inside of the inn that we've been creating or outside in the pumpkin patch, that kind of thing. And next week we'll make the vine spreading out of it that can be rigged and all that fun stuff so we can print it out just in time for our Halloween campaign. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm just going to go ahead and delete this cube and we're going to do Shift A and we're going to start with a UV sphere. Now, if you haven't messed around with this before, there are some options that we have for this sphere. I want to go ahead, you can leave it oriented as is, but for the segments, we're going to change that to 24 and have it at 12 rings. For the size, I'm just going to go ahead and leave it at 2 inches. Doesn't really matter. We can size it however we need it later. I'll probably do a little bit smaller than that, but for modeling, I'm not going to worry too much about it. Other thing you want to make sure is you do have your unit set to inches or whatever unit of measure you like to work with. And then I changed the scale of my grid floor to 1/4 of an inch. So I'm just going to rename this to pumpkin and just hide that menu by hitting the N key. I'm going to tab into edit mode. Go to the front view by hitting 1 and deselect everything, wireframe view, and then border select these faces, X to delete those vertices, go over to your modifiers tab, mirror. Make sure you check clipping because we do want that. And if you want, we can go ahead and just add our subdivision surface modifier now as well, which I usually like to crank that up to 3. But you know, do whatever you're more comfortable with. Now that we have that, I'm actually going to tab back out and just go ahead and do smooth shading for funsies. And I'm going to go into top view by hitting 7. Now, what I'm looking for is where I want my pumpkin indents to be. So I'm going to go ahead, actually I'm going to grab that one. So I'm alt right clicking. Let's do this one and this one. I mean, you can have it a little bit more irregular if you want your pumpkin to be kind of crazy looking. I'm going to have it somewhat even. And then what I'm going to do before I size in, I'm going to come down here to the pivot point. I'm going to change it to 3D cursor. So that way, when I size it in, it actually goes to the center here. Instead, because if you leave it at the median point, it's going to size like this, and that's not what I want. So I'm going to go ahead and go to 3D cursor and size it in to wherever makes you happy. So I'd say about there. I'm gonna hit Shift E and I'm gonna crease those. Okay, so there's a good start. And then of course now if you want to, you can start making things a little bit irregular. So I'm gonna grab this one, you rotate it to make it a little bit bigger. Grab this, maybe size it up a little bit. Maybe just pull that out to the right and back. Grab this one, maybe size it in a little bit more. Maybe rotate this out, size that up, size that in a little bit. Maybe size that, make that a little flatter. Cool. So obviously, keep making it however you want. You can make it, keep making it look a little bit more organic, that kind of thing. But now is too round. We want to go ahead and flatten out the top and bottom a little bit. So to do that, we'll go ahead, go back into wireframe view and zoom in to the bottom a little bit. And this one, we'll go ahead and just flatten out. So I'm going to grab maybe about that much. S, Z, and then, oops, we need to make sure if we just start doing that, it's going to go up here. Not what we want. We need to make sure we change that back to median point. S, Z, and then start flattening out. You push it up some, squish it out a little bit. I'm going to go ahead and grab this, pull it down, and I'm also, for the bottom, I'm going to grab these points, Shift E, and uncrease those, because we don't really need them creased. And then what I'm also going to do, since this is going to be a prop and it's just sitting on a table, I'm going to go ahead and flatten this part completely. So I'm going to hit SZ0 and enter. So that way hopefully it's a little bit more stable on our table. Cool. So we have our bottom there. And of course you could add a few more vertices to that. So maybe I'll grab this one. And those. Just see how it looks. Yep, nope. That's cool. Hopefully add a little bit more stability to it. Cool. So there's our bottom, looking a little better. Could always squish it a little bit more if you wanted to. I'm going to do similar thing to the top. So make sure everything's deselected. Size it along the Z-axis, and I'm going to pull it down, but I'm going to leave it a little bit more, or a little less flat, I guess I should say. And then maybe even grab this SC. I'm going to squish that a little more and bring it up. Okay, now for the top, we want to make sure we actually have a stem. I'm going to go ahead and alt-right click this loop right here and also grab that middle vertice, and we're going to hit E to extrude and just hit escape so it stays there, and we're going to size that in a little bit, pull it in, maybe size a little more. That might have been too much. Go into front view, E to extrude, and we're just going to pull that up. Grab this ring again, we're going to shift E to sharpen that. Cool. So this will be the top of our stem. Obviously, I want to go ahead and have it like making a little hook kind of thing, but we're just going to wait to do that until after the mirror modifier is applied. So for right now, we have the start of it and we'll just leave it as is. So we'll go ahead and start working on our face. Now, I want to go ahead and I'll start with the eyes. Uncheck clipping, and then what we'll do kind of get the feel of how we want our topology flowed out. So what we'll do is I want this one like that, and actually probably those two. Always grab more than what you actually need. That way you have plenty of stuff to work with, and you can always, you know, it's a lot easier to work with too much than too little, at least in my opinion, in my experience. So I'm going to grab all those faces and just hit E to extrude, hit escape, and we're just going to go ahead and pull them out and apply clipping back on before I forget to reapply it. And now we can start getting our eye shape worked out. So I'm just going to size it back in, and I'm going to line it back up so that way this crease is still lined up. So make sure you sharpen these edges, and now we can get to work on getting this shaped out. So what I'm going to kind of do is do more of that angled diamond shape rather than a triangle. Obviously, if you're doing a triangle, you probably get a little bit less. Like you probably just grab these four faces and then reshape them, kind of like I'll be doing the diamond shape. But that's what I'm going to do. That'll be a little bit creepier and scary looking. So I'm just going to grab this, pull it down, up. Probably going to leave that kind of in a similar spot. The crease, I want to make sure I kind of, you know, keep it as is. Pull that up, pull that in. We'll pull that in a little bit. Whoops. Okay, so now that we're starting to kind of get our eye shape through, you'll notice that it's getting these weird dimples. So after you start to get your eye shape in this field of view, whatever you want to call it, You want to switch to your other camera views and make sure you pull them out this way to keep the pumpkin shape, to make sure it looks like it was carved into the pumpkin itself and not not a deformity or something. Or I guess if it is more of a mimic type pumpkin, you could do it that way. Actually, it might make more sense. But for mine, I want it to look like it was carved and then maybe a spell or something was put onto it. Or at least that's what my story will be more about. So let's pull this forward a lot. More like that. That even more. All right, that's looking better. Okay, so obviously that's not the shape I want, but at least now it's back to the point where I can reshape it some more. Pull that back out. Maybe bring that down. Maybe more like that shape. I kind of like that. Let me see and make sure, pull this back out. Side view. All right, that's looking pretty good. So what I'll do, pull that out a little bit. All right, so now what we want to do is we can go ahead and grab all these vertices that make up our eyepiece. I'm going to go into top view. I'm going to hit wireframe view, E to extrude, and pull it back. And then I'm actually even going to angle it on the x-axis a little bit too, since it would be kind of carved that way. Now I'm not making my pumpkin completely hollow. If I was putting this on a shapeways or something, I would probably make it hollow instead. But since I'm going to be printing it on my printer, I'm just going to make it an indent. So I'm going to do Shift E to sharpen those edges. And then I'm also going to grab that loop and Shift E and sharpen that. Maybe not completely. Maybe about there. Looks pretty good. And then I'm going to reapply smooth shading. And maybe I will. See what I'm looking at, rather than looking at this as I'm sharpening it, I'm kind of watching how this eye reacts, because you can see how when you do that, it makes this weird point. So we don't want that point coming out right here. So that's why I'm not sharpening it completely. I'm probably just going to have it more like that. So it's still a sharper edge than it would be. And when I print it, it probably still look pretty sharp. Just the model will be a little bit softer, so that way it doesn't get any funky angles or anything. Okay, so I'm pretty happy with that eye shape. Let's go ahead and start working on the mouth. So I'm going to switch back to face select down here and kind of plot out where I want my mouth to be aligned. So obviously I can go ahead and leave clipping on since I want the mouth to be attached. I'm not making two mouths. So I'm going to start by clicking all of those. I want my mouth to be pretty dramatic. So I think all of those would be pretty good. E to extrude, and I'm just going to size along the z-axis a little bit. Then maybe draw it and size it down. Okay, Now you'll notice that the crease kind of got messed up a little bit since I extruded it. So what you want to do is go ahead, grab this edge, unsharpen that because that's not going to be part of the crease anymore. This one edge and this edge will. So go ahead and sharpen those. And we can go ahead and kind of straighten that back out. Okay. I'm just going to pull that over. What we'll do is kind of just like what we did with the eye and start shaping out our mouth how we want it. So I'm going to bring this way down, grab this. So like I said, I want it pretty dramatic. Like the corner of his mouth will probably be pretty close to where this point is, probably up here somewhere. And then it'll come all the way down here. So I'm going to drag this down, grab this. Pull that over. Kind of like that. Oh, and then don't forget to keep going to the side view and pulling out the edges so they don't get too crazy. Pull that out, this one out. So your pumpkin stays looking like a pumpkin. Okay. I'm gonna pull that down. So, as you can see, this is going to be the outline of the mouth here. This is kind of the center of the mouth, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to have the mouse up here and hit V to rip and just kind of pull that up. I'm going to undo it because if you'll notice, if you have your mouse on the other side and you hit V to rip, it will connect it to this one. So I guess it doesn't really matter. I guess I'll just leave it as is, but whenever you use the rip tool, which is the V for shortcut, the hotkey, whatever side your mouse is on is the direction that it's going to rip in. So that's a good thing to keep in mind when you do decide to use the rip tool. I'm going to pull this back over to make sure it kind of lines up still. And the reason I'm ripping this is because it gives me another edge. It splits that. So it does make a 5 point here. And that's going to let me shape out the teeth. And then once I extrude it back like we did the eye, we can add in our faces in the back. So I'm going to pull this up. Oops, I grabbed the wrong vertice there. Grab that vertice, pull that up, and start shaping out the teeth how I want them. So I'm going to pull this up. And then our other tooth will be this one. So I'll probably leave that like that. And then also, this is supposed to be the corner of the mouth. So actually, I'm going to go ahead and delete this face because I don't need it. I do need to leave this here because that'll probably be another tooth. But I want to make sure that's empty. So just delete that. It's unnecessary right now. So I'm going to go ahead and sharpen all of these edges, including this one. And then start shaping out these teeth as well. So I'm going to pull this down. Pull this over. I'm actually probably going to pull that more like that. This is probably like that. And once we extrude the mouth out, it will be a little bit easier to see how our teeth will be. So let's go ahead, make sure everything's sharpened. If it's not, no big deal. You can always go back and sharpen. And grab everything, make sure that whole loop is selected. It is. Actually, I'm going to go back into top view, so it'll be a little bit easier to look at. E to extrude and pull it back, kind of to match up with the eye, but you'll notice that over here we kind of go out of the pumpkin a little bit. So to make sure that it stays in the pumpkin, I'm going to angle it just like we did with the eye as well. Okay, so into front view, you'll want to go ahead, I'm just going to switch to edge select, and we're going to grab the points of the teeth here, and even right here, and just make sure everything's sharpened. Still a little bit too closed for how I want it. I'm probably going to go ahead and bring this up a lot more. So let's go ahead and grab this. Oops, not that loop. That loop. And I can deselect because I want that to stay kind of where it is already. Oh, that grabbed everything. Okay, so let's just grab this one, that one, this one, and that one. And we'll also have to select that vertice since it's so close. And we're just going to drag that up. I'm going to zoom out to kind of look. And I'm even going to pull it up a little more, but I'm going to have to grab that one too. Maybe more like that. And then I'm going to grab this edge. I pull that up. We'll have to grab this as well. Okay. You'll notice that since we sharpen these edges, there's kind of some weird things going on here. So you want to take a look and then sharpen where you need to. So I'll sharpen it, but not completely. Try and get that out. This just needs to come out like that. Really quick before we switch over to making the stem, I do want to fix this flap here. We'll go ahead and hit Shift E to sharpen that. And then he kind of has a flap on his tooth as well. So I'll fix that, and down here as well. And then, like I said, we want to close this whole, oh, I forgot to sharpen this. So grab this edge and this edge, and we're just going to hit F for face. Why isn't this working as well? There we go. And then we want to face here. Oh, forgot to sharpen that one. I'll grab this one. Face. Awesome, and it should automatically close right there for you. Perfect. So now that we have that all closed up and ready to go, we can duplicate it, hide our first one, and apply the mirror modifier. Leave the subdivision surface modifier there though, so that way we can tab back into edit mode. I'm going to go back to vertex select, grab these first ones. I'm actually going to lower it quite a bit. E to extrude, pull it up, rotate it, maybe size it down a little bit. E to extrude, rotate it more. There is our jack-o'-lantern. Awesome. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Stay tuned for next week's video. We'll go ahead and create some vines that are coming out of the top of this, so that way we can have him become a monster. So we'll have this as a print itself, duplicate it, and then set it up so it can be rigged, which hopefully I'll have time. So we'll make the vines and the rig next week right before Halloween, so it'll be in time for your Halloween campaign. Don't forget to like and subscribe this video. Make sure you leave any comments for tips or tricks or any kind of requests. I really appreciate that kind of stuff, and I will see you guys next week.